47% of the people who will vote for the president no matter what. All right, there are 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they are victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it. That it's an entitlement, and government should give it to them. And they will vote for this president no matter what. And I mean, the president starts off with 48, 49, 40, he starts off with a huge number. These are people who pay no income tax. 47% of Americans pay no income tax. So our message of low taxes doesn't connect. And he'll be out there talking about tax cuts for the rich. I mean, that's what they sell every 4 years. And so my job is not to worry about those people. I'll never convince them that they should take personal responsibility and care for their lives. What I have to do is convince the 5 to 10% in the Senate that are independent, that are thoughtful, that look at voting one way or the other depending upon, in some cases, emotion, whether they like the guy or not.
Also in that video, Romney makes a joke about the background of his father, who was born of American parents in Mexico.
Had he been born of Mexican parents, I'd have a better shot of winning this, but he was not. Born of Americans living in Mexico. They lived there for a number of years, and I mean, I say that jokingly, but it'd be helpful to be Latino.
Well, Obama for America campaign manager Jim Messina then issued this statement. It's shocking that a candidate for president of the United States would go behind closed doors and declare to a group of wealthy donors that half of the American people view themselves as victims entitled to handouts and are unwilling to take personal responsibility for their lives. It's hard to serve as president for all Americans when you've disdainfully written off half the nation. In a late-night news conference, Romney responded.
Well, it's not elegantly stated. Let me put it that way. I'm speaking off the cuff in response to a question, and I'm sure I could state it more clearly and in a more effective way. But it's a message which I'm going to carry and continue to carry, which is, look, the president's approach is attractive to people who aren't not paying taxes because, frankly, my discussion about lowering taxes isn't as attractive to them, and therefore I'm not likely to draw them into my campaign as effectively as those who are in the middle.
Let me bring in Ann Kornblut, who is Deputy National Politics Editor for The Washington Post, and Shira Toeplitz, politics reporter for Roll Call. Good to see both of you. And let me play just a little of the reaction across the board, across the networks that came in this morning.
This is one of the worst weeks for any presidential candidate in a general election that any of us can remember around this table.
It's somewhere between, I think, 6 and 7 on the Richter scale, so it does some damage, I think, but I don't know if the foundation is completely damaged by all of this.
It's so contemptuous. It's so condescending.
Everybody has their YouTube moment in American politics.
I really think these videos are quite devastating, and they're devastating because they're actually not shocking.
And is this just one more thing that's throwing the campaign off message at a time when they want to establish their message, or is it something bigger?
It seems like it might be something bigger. They've gone to some lengths to describe it as just a bump in the road. They're saying they're going to recover from it and they're going to keep campaigning, obviously. But by the way they scrambled to do the press conference last night, and I think judging from the reaction that you've seen there, and I would add to that David Brooks's column today in the New York Times, the reaction, the condemnation of it has been pretty swift and pretty harsh, even from some Republicans, although there are some who are rallying around him one way or another, because this wasn't a gaffe, because he went out and said, okay, I stated it inartfully, but I meant the fundamentals. It's going to be the topic of discussion that not just Mitt Romney, but I would suspect congressional candidates around the country are going to have to talk about now.
Well, let me bring up a little bit of the David Brooks column. It reads in part this morning from the New York Times, as a description of America today, Romney's comment is a country club fantasy. It's what self-satisfied millionaires say to each other. It reinforces every negative view people have about Romney. Shira, is this tape potentially going to alienate the middle that he needs to be courting right now?
It is going to alienate the middle, but what I think is really notable about his comments in that video, he talks about the 47% and then he talks about this 5 to 10% of independents. Well, over the summer, that has not been his strategy at all. He has not been reaching out to independents at all. The Romney campaign in particular has really viewed this contest as a base election, which is probably in many ways why he also said those things. It was to drive out the base. It was to raise money from a group of people so he could drive out the base. This is a base election. This is not about about wooing independence.
This also comes just hours after Mitt Romney addressed the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Los Angeles. Obviously, a group that the Republicans have said they want to make some inroads against. How serious are those comments, do you think?
Oh, I mean, look, this is going to reverberate, I think, with all kinds of demographic groups. It's going to reverberate with working class white people who don't pay taxes. It's going to reverberate with women. It's going to reverberate with military families. I don't think there's any group that's not going to, in some way, be either hear about what he said or see themselves somehow reflected in it. But I agree with Shira. I think that given that their focus has been pretty intently on the base for all this time, usually you try to do two things. You try to win the base, turn out the base, and peel off some independents in the middle. They're going to have to redouble their efforts if they want to go to the middle again.